Welcome to Council Preview. I'm Tom Lokes, Communications Director, City of Marshfield. And always, Steve Barg, our City Administrator, sitting here.
Thanks. Good to be here with you today, as always, Tom.
Thank you so much. And we're going to talk about, in the first part of our program, about the Common Council meeting that's going to take place on September 22nd, which is a Tuesday next week. We are filming this on Thursday of the week before. And we're going to go over some high-level items that are going to be on the agenda. And then the second part, we're going to talk about some things that are happening, like our census, our elections, things like that might help you better understand the process of what we do in the city government. So we'll have a two-parter here. So I'm going to turn it right over to Steve. I'm going to go into where we talked about earlier, what we want to talk about, and we're going to get right into finances. How about that? That's always fun to talk about.
It is. Well, it's important. Whether it seems exciting sometimes, it might be like what you read before you go to bed or something, but truthfully, it matters a lot to us at the city. The city council will be considering a proposal that came through the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee to transfer roughly $1 million from the city's general fund reserves to the debt service fund. And so you say, okay, why is this significant? Why are we doing this? And the thing is, if people have been following us, they know that a couple of years ago we had some issues with transfer of monies from our TIF districts, and we were actually using debt service more than we should have to pay some of our expenses. Well, as a result of that, the debt service fund has a negative balance. And the intent of the debt service fund, Tom, is that it have really a zero balance ultimately after the year's debt payments are made. And so what we want to do is transfer money from the general fund, which is our savings account in a way, to debt service to get that to zero. And then from now on, as we go forward, we will be every year when we make payments and we take money in for debt service to make them from where they come and make the payments, we'll get back to zero every year. That's what should happen. It should zero out instead of being in the red. So there were some concerns raised. You might have seen the meeting or been at the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting about transferring $1 million from our general fund. What's that going to mean? What's Moody's going to think when they see that our savings balance per se is dropping? Well, Moody's knows what's going on. They know what we're dealing with, and they know that part of what we have to do is really to get the debt service back where it belongs. So yes, our general fund balance will take a hit as a result, but in the big picture, this, as Ron Allman, our finance director, says, is part of where we need to get back to kind of find ourselves in center again.
All right. Curious what you talk about general fund. What is usually in a city our size's general fund? What kind of an amount?
Well, the amount that the most auditors recommend you have is between 25 and 30% of your annual expenditures. So the city of Marshfield has about a general fund expenditures for every year about $22.5 million. So if you do the math, you come up with the fact that we probably should have somewhere in the neighborhood of, $6 million, give or take, at any time in that fund. We've been below that lately, and this is going to drop it a bit more. But that is because of what we've talked about in the past, I think, in this program, Tom, that we were actually using funds from the TIF districts to make expenditures that we probably shouldn't have. And so we're still making that bigger correction, and this is part of it.
Okay. But basically, this is an accounting process, if you want to say it.
It is. If somebody sees this and says, the city is spending $1 million, this ought to be talked about for hours. No, not really. We're not spending any money. It's a paper transfer, but it's one that does help clear up the books in a way that ultimately will help us. But for the moment, it looks like it's painful to see and I keep calling it the savings account, but to see that general fund balance drop. But it's something that really needs to be done in order to make that self-correction.
Will there be a way to replenish those funds over the next several years then?
Well, it's all part of how we handle the annual budget, that we maybe tighten our belts, and how we handle the TIF district transfers and pay the debts. But we've got Moody's on board with the fact that in the next 3, 4, 5 years, they're going to see that balance grow back to a level where it's up in that 20+% range. And I think they understand our plan. It's just a matter of holding ourselves, staff and elected officials, to that plan.
All right. Well, that helps explain the process a bit better. Do you want to dive into anything with 2021 budget?
Just a little bit. What we're trying to do this year, Tom, is to have Ron Allman, our finance director, who does a wonderful job. We're having him give regular updates at the council meeting. And you say, well, why is that important? I mean, we're not up to the point of presenting a budget yet. What are all these checkpoints about? Well, there are opportunities for him to say, okay, here's what we're seeing. Tonight I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Maybe I'm going to talk about the debt. Maybe in another meeting I'm going to talk more about some of the challenges we're facing with revenues or whatever. So what he's going to really talk about this time, I think, although he's still putting it together as we have this program taped, but is the general fund. What are we trying to hold expenditures to? What are some of the challenges in doing that? What are some of the decisions that council is going to have to make when they see this coming into mid-October? It's good preparation for them. I think elected officials, Tom, like to know ahead of time what are some of the things you're going to have to decide rather than have it sprung on them. Hey guys, guess what? We got a shortfall. How are you going to handle it tonight? Nobody likes that.
Right. Let's talk about how the budget really affects the general taxpayer. Why is this important to them?
Well, you know, the general fund budget, which as I said is about $22.5 million, at least it was last year, the way that comes out with the revenues and expenses, you know, determines what kind of tax rate we have. And for a number of years here in the city of Marshfield, we held the tax rate pretty low. Last year we had a little bit more of an increase, and you know, we are lower than our neighboring cities. I think we did a slide last year in the you know, the PowerPoint that showed that we're at $9.54 per thousand of value. But Stevens Point, Wisconsin Rapids, and Wausau are all over 10. In fact, I think Wisconsin Rapids is a ways over 10. So we're below our neighbors, and yet we're providing similar services, you know, and we also have a zoo, and you know, there's a lot of expenditures. So the reason it's important for the citizens to follow the budget process is those decisions we make on spending, and if we're adding any new programs or new staff, I mean, those are things that you keep an eye on, because it all ultimately comes down to what we have to charge the public for these services. And you know, tax rates are things nobody wants to see increase, but sometimes you have to do it to maintain the level of services that the public wants. But we're going to be as frugal as we can, reasonably, to try and do the work. But costs keep going up. You know, they go up for people at home too, my wife and I, when you go to the grocery store and other places. So it's a challenge.
All right. We'll see what Ron has to say on Tuesday night, and hopefully that he'll explain where we're at in this process to help our council make a better decision.
It'll be another milestone in the
Another
process.
decision, yeah.
Yep.
I don't want to say better, but a decision. How about that?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Let's move on to the next one. Item Q has to do with our 17th reconstruction project. We originally had it slated 2021.
Yeah, this one's been all over the map. For people who aren't familiar with this, this is would be the improvement of East 17th Street between Peach area and towards Cedar. I think I forget exactly the boundaries of it, maybe over toward Maple. But the idea is that we would be improving the street, reconstructing it, and putting in some other improvements along with it. And that's over by the fairgrounds. So you know, people who've been in that area have said, look, I'm walking, I go for walks, and it's kind of hazardous. You know, it's a narrow street and no sidewalks, not really a shoulder either, as I recall. So it's a good project. It's been backed up for several years now. We keep moving it back in the CIP because it seems like there's other more pressing roads. And we're going to talk about maybe Cleveland in a little bit, which has been on the list for a long time. But it was on for 2023 with the staff's presented CIP. But Tom Witzel came up and said, you know, we put this off for years. Can we move it up? And the council embraced a CIP that had it for 2021. So our engineering staff, Tom, has been doing a lot of work. They've been digging in to plan for that project. But Ron Ullman has pointed out, and we've talked about this a little bit, by doing that, by moving that up to 2021, we're actually borrowing more next year than our new 5-year plan says we're supposed to. We spent a lot of money and time with Ellers to do a 5-year plan. So he's going to ask if we can move that back 1 year to 2022 in order to stay with our borrowing limits for the year 2021. And I hope it'll be received well. I know there's concerns about this, how many times this street has been backed up for improvement, but we'll continue doing the engineering work in 2021 and hopefully get that done in the following year.
Yeah, that's a big project, and you did say it goes by our zoo. Is that correct?
It goes
Or
by
close?
the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds.
I'm sorry, the
Yep,
fairgrounds.
it goes out by the fairgrounds. It actually kind of runs through the fairgrounds property. So you see it when you're out there for the annual state fair and other things.
Okay, well, next time I drive over there, I'll take a look and see what that's about. Yeah, I don't know, I was confusing the zoo and the fair, but they're
That's okay.
They're on east side. That's on the west side, but
And I want people to know again, Tom, that these projects get back up sometimes, and it's not that we don't want to do them. We would love to do more every year. You know that. You're involved in the discussions with the department heads, but you know, it's what finances can allow and what the top priorities are. So we'll see if they're willing to move this back one more year with the understanding that 2022 would be the year for reconstructing that road.
Yep. But one thing just to note, our staff does a lot of repair and maintenance so we don't have to always repair these so quickly too.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference.
We have an outstanding staff. Our engineering staff, Tom Turchi, Tim Cassidy, Dan Kinect leading the department. Over in the street department, Chris Holly and others. They do a phenomenal job. I can tell you that the road where my wife and I live, we live up on North Hills on the north end. That was redone this year with the overlay and they widened the shoulder a little bit, did some work in the ditches. The crew just does a wonderful job. It's just a matter of how much money we can put toward road work. And I know the people that I hear from want to see more done every year. It's just a matter of whether the dollars are there.
Mm-hmm. All right. The election is getting close. I think this kind of dovetails what you're talking about here as a resolution authorizing you to possibly take any necessary action, emergency action if a COVID would hit maybe our staff?
Yeah, there's a couple items for the meeting on Tuesday, Tom, that I'm still kind of framing as the preparation comes on here. So it may be worded a little bit differently. It may not be a resolution. That's kind of what I'm thinking now. But what I'll be doing is looking to the council to see if they're willing to give me some authority in case we need to make some drastic changes because of COVID, maybe restrict hours, even shut down if necessary, or do something else. The council provided me with this authority back in March, if you remember, when COVID broke. And then, of course, we opened the facilities basically on June 1st, City Hall and other locations to the public again. But elections is a big thing. The presidential election, the interest is high. The turnout is going to be likely high, even though people will be, absentee voting as well. But even absentee voting, they come to City Hall and interact with our staff. So I want to make sure that our staff stays healthy. There's schools open again now, so some of our staff have kids in school, and what if there's cases coming out of schools, and parents have to stay home with their children. We want to make sure as best we can to keep our staff healthy during this next few weeks because it's going to be a bit crazy. And so I'm going to look to see what the council would give me for authorization if need be. Take, for example, Tom, the September 22nd council meeting. Well, the 29th is a Tuesday, but it's the 5th Tuesday. So after this week, we're going to have 3 weeks until the next meeting on October 13th. Well, what if something breaks and we can't call the council together on a moment's notice? Would I have some authority to take some actions? And we'll see where they want to go with that or if they don't feel led to do so.
All right. Well, we'll wait for that on next Tuesday. A couple more items that we want to go through on the agenda, and then we'll switch gears here a little bit into our second half. Okay. We talk about a joint meeting with utility.
Yeah, we had a really good joint meeting with the Utilities Commission and the council back in April of 2019. These are two important bodies. Obviously, the council is, the governing body for the city, but the Utilities Commission, they have an important job. They deal with electric and water rates and decisions about important improvements to water and electric service and all that. So they got together in April of 19. I think they had 4 topics, and they discussed them. No actions taken. It's a meeting without any votes, but it was helpful, and they'd like to do the same thing again on October 13th. So what would happen would be the meeting would be at 5:30, and then there'd be a break, and then at 7 o'clock, an hour later than normal, at 7 o'clock would be the regular council meeting. So a busy night, but we're still trying to accumulate what topics might be for the agenda. We want to get maybe 3 good ones that they can discuss and maybe come to some idea of where we go in the future.
All right. And coming up, kind of like a holiday here, we call it Trick or Treat. Can you give us any plans on maybe what the city is going to do if they can do anything with the event?
This is really interesting because Trick or Treat just happens faithfully every year. Sometimes the weather's nice, sometimes the weather's awful. I know there have been some really cold nights since I've been here in Marshfield where they've had bundled up where you can't even see their costumes. But with COVID-19, what do, right? So there's a lot of cities having this discussion. The city administrator's line that I monitor, as far as the web, is kind of going off the charts. Some cities are closing it down, don't want to have people interacting with people at front doors and stuff. Others are saying, well, what if you tried to encourage people to put the candy out on a table in front of their house, and so the people aren't really, talking to each other close up or touching each other. Other cities are saying, look, just leave it the way it is and let the parents decide what they want to do. So I want to find out where our council is at. A couple weeks ago, Tom, I didn't even know that this was something we were going to get involved in as a city. I wasn't sure who made the call, but it sounds like the city really has the ultimate decision as to whether it goes forward. It would normally be on Halloween night, the 31st of October from 5:30 to 7:30. So that's our starting point. But there will be questions about the health and safety in the COVID-19 era and whether we should continue it, and if so, what restrictions or direction would we give to the public for how we want to see this conducted?
Yeah, so there'll be more about it. Once we find a decision that's made, we'll make that public as well. When
Right.
that happens, hopefully we get some direction from the council if they have an idea of what they might want to do. Because we have, I believe, it's 5th Street that we usually block off.
Yeah.
And that's a big event. Thousands of people go there. I had my first chance with it last year. Amazing. And they even said it wasn't as well attended as usual. It was cold that night, if I remember right, but it was fun. Something unique with Marshfield to have that street blocked off. So we'll have to see what happens.
It's really a shame to be talking about this because it's a fun event every year for the kids. You know, they go around, they put on a fun costume, they get candy. It's a great thing. As a person who hands it out from my front door, I enjoy that too, seeing what the kids wear. But, you know, we live in an era with the health and safety issue right now with the pandemic where we would be remiss, Tom, if we didn't at least talk about this before it goes on to decide whether or not we have any concerns and to try and work through things.
Yeah, most definitely. We may not get those full-size candy bars this year.
There you go.
You always hope for that.
That's more for me then, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't need more, I'm
No,
sorry.
I don't either, but you always hope for that as a kid, even as an adult, because we have to go with our kids a lot that are younger, so.
Yeah, even as I'm handing it out, I look at and I know what I'd rather have myself of the
Oh,
things that I'm giving out.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to switch gears here. We'll come back and talk about the census. But before that, you can watch a short video here about the census.
Come one, come all. The 2020 census is here.
Boys and girls in every town, white or brown, I hope you hear my sound. Oh yes, we need you now. This the time to come on down. Every 10 years we got to take a quick count to who we are. People you know we got to, so we know how to spend them all. The gov got funds to give, but don't know where to give it to. If you don't count your baby, how will we know to build more schools? Take the census, come on down. Tell your friends this 2020 census, knock up this out. Take the census, come around. Tell your friends this 2020 census, knock up this out. We don't care who you are, citizen or not, it's in our constitution. There's gonna be a lot of people, man, but never been easier. Do it all on and through your phone. Billy's our census taker. Do your part, there's one less on. Take the census, come on down. Tell your friends this 2020 census, knock up this out. Take the census, make the future bright for all our kids. Take the census, so we know just how to help us it. And we know where to build new roads. Put it on a hospital. I'm looking at a brand new road. Do your part, this one last song.
Well, thank you for joining us in our second part of our council preview. This isn't really about the council meeting, but we thought we'd talk about elections. It's really important going on here all the way up till, I believe, November 4th, which is a big election. It's our presidential election. I got Steve here, Bart, our city administrator, just to give you a few dates and some tips that what we're doing as a city for regarding elections. So hopefully that'll help you guys out.
Yeah, I'll just give you some of the basics here. And again, for any questions, please contact the city clerk's office here in Marshfield. Deb Hall and her staff, Jessica and Jan, are just outstanding, and they'd be glad to talk to you about what you need to do. The number to call is, well, I don't know what number, do we normally use a main number? Or
Yeah, we can use a number of 715-486-2000,
Okay.
and you'll get a tree there.
Right.
And they could actually go right in there.
Okay, well, anyway, you need to make a request for an absentee ballot if that's what you want to do, and more people are voting absentee now because of some of the health concerns with COVID and other reasons. If you're not able to, come to the voting place, you can do that by requesting it of the city clerk, or you can go online at myvote.wi.gov. An absentee ballot will be sent to you at some point, not right away. Some people think that voting is going on today, as we're taping this. It's not. But we need a written request from you, and there's information you'll need to fill out. You need to make an application to receive an absentee ballot by mail. The deadline for making an application to receive an absentee ballot by mail is actually 5 p.m. On the Friday before the election. Actually, it's the Thursday before the election, I'm sorry. Thursday, October 29th. So if you ask for an absentee ballot by mail after that, it'll be too late. Keep that date in mind. But we're going to see more people, I would assume, coming to do absentee ballot in person. We've been doing this in the council chambers. We did it for the last couple of elections. It's gone very well. Even in the COVID environment, we've got lots of good safeguards there to protect everyone. And the voting in person will be as follows. Tuesday, the 20th of October through the 23rd on a Friday from 8 to 5:30. And the same for the following week, Monday through Friday, the 26th through the 30th from 8 to 5:30. Also, because of the expected high turnout for absentee balloting with a presidential election, we're going to be open 2 Saturdays too. Saturday the 24th and Saturday the 31st of October. The 2 Saturdays right before the election from 8 to noon. So if that's more convenient for you to vote absentee, you can certainly do that. But please exercise your right to vote. Please call with any questions and talk to the clerk's office. Like I said, they're very helpful people, and they'll be glad to talk you through it.
Alrighty, thanks, Steve. And the crew is there working quite a bit. If you stop into City Hall, they'll be glad to help you get that. And you see it every day. I think they're in that 60 percentile of absentee.
Wow.
But I'm not sure. I know some
It's heavy.
cities are are higher.
Yeah.
So I'll try to get that information from our clerk to publish that. It is public information. People kind of like to know where we're at in getting absentees. Again, it's not voting, it's just getting the ballots out.
Yeah, and please do give our staff grace. They're working very hard under difficult circumstances. Again, the expected turnout through absentee is much higher because of it's a presidential election, there's COVID-19, all these things. So, they'll work with you, but please try and be as patient with our staff as you can.
Yeah, because these rules are set by a state
Correct.
and
Correct.
not our municipality, so we have to abide by them.
That's correct. That is correct, Tom.
Let's talk about the census. I think that's a really important piece. Been going on since last year. We're getting down to the end. Excuse me. Why is it so important for us, I guess, Steve, to be filling out the census form? And then maybe you could share a few dates yet that are still open.
Yeah, Tom, first and foremost, the reason we want to get everyone filling it out is because it's an important count of our population, and it helps us for various reasons. It helps the folks in government to know what some of the issues and concerns are, and just to get a count of how many people are living in various cities and villages across the country. For us, particularly at City Hall, it's important because the number of people we have, the population, does affect some of the potential opportunities we have for grants and for, and for state aid and those kind of things come into play. So we want everyone represented, and we want to make sure as many people are counted as possible. And I know that when it first came out, Tom, some people see that and they're like, oh, what's this, And but they're following up with people. They're making efforts to reach out to every household. I think the last time I saw, we were around 78% covered of the people they believe to be here. And but that was back a number of weeks ago. Hopefully we're now into the 80s or more. And we don't want to let up. We want to keep our foot on the gas pedal. So the timelines you were talking about before, census takers are out interviewing people in households, and they'll continue through the end of this month, September. So look for them if you haven't filled out your form yet. They're also working at some of the local places that provide human and social services during that time. The deadline for the count to be provided to the White House, I believe actually, is the end of the year. December 31st. And then the redistricting, if necessary, will happen next year. That's also important too, because it determines how many electoral votes, for example, Wisconsin gets, how we apportion the districts, if they move lines to expand or contract certain areas because of population, that's critical. But we really need you to turn these in as soon as possible so we can get that count in properly at the end of the year.
And it's a process that's usually done, is done every 10 years.
It is, and it's more important than ever, and yet it gets harder than ever for people to do, because we're a mobile society, and people are transient. They move during the middle of the census taking time, but we really need everyone to participate. And if you haven't, or you know someone who hasn't, please follow up on this.
Well, if anybody's interested in knowing more about the census or needs more information, I have it. They can give me a call if they'd like, 715-486-2070. I have information in different languages, Hispanic, French, you name it. If you need it, I can provide that. I'd be gladly do that so we can make sure we get that filled out. So.
Yeah, I think a good way to think of it is we think of voting as being your civic responsibility as an American. I think this is a good way to think of every 10 years of census, that filling that out is a civic responsibility. It really helps us to be able to plan for the future, to make sure we know an accurate count. So please fill the census out if you haven't yet.
Alrighty, well, thank you, Steve, for coming by our studio here, sharing all this good information. We'll meet back up in 3 weeks. Oh, not 3, a little less than 3 weeks, because you said council's not going to be until
until October 13th. Yeah, we got 5 Tuesdays this month.
Yeah, so we'll get back together, talk about what's on that Common Council meeting coming up in the second week of October. We'll be right in the thick of budget.
Oh, we will.
And maybe you'll have some budget meetings at that time.
We will. They're going to be expected to be up to 3 budget meetings in the last part of October and early November. So you and I will have a lot to talk about the next time we convene.
Yeah, quite a bit. But as always, if you do have a question and you really want it answered, give Steve a call or me a call, and we'll figure it out. You can go right on the tree again, 715-486-2000, and I'll direct you to whatever you want. We're in there as communications, and Steve is under there as administration.
Yeah, or go on our website. We've got you can click on to connect with our email addresses and other contact information there too. Love to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, give us feedback on the show. We do it for you guys, and we want to hear what you like, maybe what you would want in the show. That helps us make sure that we give what you want from us, because this information is already in our heads, but we want to make sure you get that information. So again, I'm Tom Laux, and thanks to Steve Barg again for sitting in here with me for our council preview.